You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
The regular season is heating up. New stars are emerging, and that means more opportunities to win up to 25 times your cash on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection on a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's that easy. Let it fly to turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Watch your favorite players and get paid doing it this basketball season. See your entries make progress during the game or make new entries for the second half and the fourth quarter. 3-pointers, assists, rebounds, and everything in between are yours for the taking. Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome back to Who Did What Now? The historical historical, funny, I mean, I try and be funny. Let's just say history. The history podcast with me, your effervescent host, Katie Charlwood. Selfish millennial and reader of books. The new year is upon us. 2020 has gone. I am moving and making noise on a leather couch. Sounds dodgy. But yeah, so 2020, the dumpster fire that was 2020 is something that I think I'll be talking about. If this continues on, like I hope it will, one day I will be in some sort of history show discussing the perils of 2020. Although now I do actually start to wish I'd kept a journal. Because this year's just been, how do I put it, 2020 is the best example of time travel, because you know how in sort of time travel movies, they would just keep going back in time when they'd fix something and then something else would mess up. That's what 2020 was like. Although I maintain all of this started with the Cats movie in 2019, and that was just an affront to God. I don't know, the powers that be, and led to the travesty that was 2020. Although 2020 wasn't too bad for me, actually. 2021 starts with me moving back home to my mother's house. But, you win some, you lose some. And it's as good a place to start as any. Hi, if you are new here to Who Did What Now, I discuss people, places, and things from ancient times to modern-ish days that I find interesting. If you're not new here, welcome back. And first of all, I would like to apologise for the last episode. Oh, okay. Not an excuse. I was up till stupid o'clock in the morning editing it, and I was literally falling asleep as I was working on it. I may actually have to re-upload it, re-edit it and re-upload it, because wow. Clearly, you can tell that I was not compos mentis, like, editing that, because like, there are parts where it just cuts off before the end of the sentence. I'm like, what was I doing? Like, I was half asleep, like, trying to drink coffee, tepid coffee, and I am so sorry. You deserve better, pals, you do. I mean, and also, in addition, furthermore, I feel like I should have used some kind of software to slow down my speech, because I only just realised. Because I sometimes I'll re-listen to, the podcast after I've uploaded it just to see. So I had it on and I was like, doing stuff around the house and I was listening to myself because that's not weird. And, oh my goodness, parts legit sound like I've been sped up. Like I sound like somebody turned the chipmunk effect on and just me. Like, believe it or not, I actually had to train myself to speak slower. I mean, I had to. It was something I had to do. When you talk quickly, when you have quick, fast speech, and you have this accent, it's a recipe for disaster. And the problem is, I get excited when two of my favourite interests collide. History plus true crime, mwah, chef's kiss. Like, yes, please, and thank you. However, I will do better to rein it in future. I will be better in the future. I am trying, I promise. I was so surprised that I knew I was excited, like doing the story and writing about it and reading it, but I didn't think I was like, I did not think I was like. In other news, Storm Bell was raging outside. I'm going to say raging. It's more like ticked off. So there was thunder and lightning, and so like when I was actually writing this down, like that shows you the time it's taking me to write this and then record it, because as I was writing this, Storm Bella was happening, and there was like thunder and lightning, and there was like snow and hail and stuff. And anyway, the storm wasn't that bad because very few people lost trampolines. Where I am, if you don't see a trampoline fly past your house, you know it's not been a terrible storm. So, today's tale is from the not so distant past, the millennium. I mean, well, I say the millennium, but that's not technically correct. I'm going to actually myself here. So general people would refer to like the year 2000 as the millennium, except you don't start at year 0. You start at year 1. So technically 2001, not 2000 was the millennium, but 2000 is more aesthetically pleasing, and it fits better on those like Happy New Year glasses and other such memorabilia. So the 90s were a wild time. Nobody had eyebrows, ska bands were popular, and everyone thought the world was going to be destroyed by Y2K. Well, not everyone, but we'll discuss that. And what is Y2K, I hear some of you ask. Well, I've seen enough of Gen Z being very confused about Y2K on TikTok, and so here I am. So to all of the Gen Z who have no idea, let me enlighten you, my friends. If any Gen Z actually listen to my podcast, I don't know if you do, but hi! Y2K, Y is year, 2 is 2, and K is 1000. So Y2K is year 2000, and it's the year 2000 problem, otherwise known as the Y2K bug or glitch, and what I would have known it as was the millennium bug. Makes it sound cute, doesn't it? And look, it's a ladybug. It's a millennium bug. Anywho, no. So there was an issue and or events, which are basically related to the formatting of calendar dates beginning in the year 2000. I know, you're like, what? Okay, so, right, we should probably start at the beginning. In the 60s, data was expensive, like wildly expensive. So when computer programmers were like writing code and creating programs and all those processes, they had to do so in as efficiently as possible cost-wise especially. So, I mean, like nowadays we have terabyte hard drives. Our phones, like my iPhone, these phones have more storage space on them, more computer memory on them than the original computers did. It's like, I know some of you have seen those like photos of old computers and they would take up an entire room. And now we have better, quicker, stronger processes in the palm of our hands. And that's amazing. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, so going down the way, so we would like terabyte, like 1,000 gigs, I think it is, a gigabyte, which is like 1,000 megabytes. So megabytes are 1,000 bits. So yeah, basically it would cost, like, was it $750 billion in today's money, amount of space that these programs like would need. So when they could cut costs, they did their best. So when these programmers were initially writing code, like, they didn't have a lot of storage space and computer memory to work with. And the space they did have was costly. So they did what most of us, any of us would do, and they shortened stuff down. And by stuff, I mean dates. And by dates, I mean years. And by that, I mean the format of the years. So, yeah, programmers needed to save space and money, and as a result, the year 1969 became 69. So instead of having the 4 digits, 1969, they would only have 2 digits, 69. 1975, 75, and so on and so forth. 98, 99, blah, 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 blah. I mean, and here's the thing, they probably thought at some point the code or whatever, as you can see, I'm incredibly technical, they probably thought this was going to be like rewritten and patched at some point. I mean, this is the 60s, when computers are in their infancy. I mean, they probably hoped, but I didn't have any idea like how far-reaching, computers would go and how important these programs would be in the grand scheme of things at 30, 40 years down the line, And let's face it, they had no idea, like, that their base code was going to be going for this long. And, yeah, so this 2-digit year format was utilized by early coders to minimize computer memory. That's the best way to say it. And what this meant was that, theoretically, computers could interpret the 00 of 2000, so 20000, as 1900. I know you're thinking that doesn't seem like a big deal, but it could theoretically cause so many glitches in programs and bugs and computer crashes. It could lead to a smorgasbord of disaster. So, okay, for example, if you think time and date doesn't matter in computers or anything like that, there was a place I worked with a till system that if the internal clock glitched out or stopped working for whatever reason, the entire till system would just freeze. So you wouldn't be able to do anything. Like the receipt machine wouldn't work. You couldn't open the till drawer to get money out. You couldn't check anything. Everything would just completely freeze, and you would have to phone up IT, and IT would have to fix it and reset the time for you. And that's something that was a second off. Like a split second off, and it would just shut down. Entire smorgasbord of disaster. Now, so by the time the 90s rolled around, computers were, even though there wasn't a computer in every home, computers ran so much of the world. They were an integral part of daily life. In computers is what run the electric systems. There's a word for that. What's the word for that? The electrics that go through your town and light up all the streets and stuff. How do I not know this word? Could I Google it? Probably. So So that thing, the traffic lights, sort of air traffic control, the nuclear. So the nuclear missile thing was like a big part of it, because the US, as far as I remember, in order to like fire the nuclear missiles, that machine is run on a floppy disk. Now, some of you are like, what is a floppy disk? Well, a floppy disk, if you ever seen the save button on on Microsoft Word, that is a floppy disk. It was like a little plastic thing with a circle disk of like a tiny. I was like, can I compare it to like an LP or a CD? But I don't know if you know what those things are. So that would be inside, and that's what would hold the data. And these were probably like 3 inches by 3 inches or something like that. But the one that's to do with the nuclear missiles in the US, that computer is that's one of the big floppy disks, which is like probably closer to A5 size, I think. Yeah. So that's a thing. But anyway, so effectively they thought, like, you know, banking systems, they all ran in that. Anyone who's seen Captain Marvel or was alive in the past would know what a blockbuster video is. So like you would go and you would rent physical videotapes, cassettes of movies. And so the way this would work out is, was that the way that it would glitch out when the time sort of went back to 1900, is it would give you basically a century's worth of late fees for Blockbuster Video, or your mortgage payments would be like huge because they would be out of sync, or they might wipe out your mortgage payment completely, and which would be good for you but terrible for the actual for the banks and stuff. And how do I put this? So many things, they ran on computers, to the point where the US actually had a website. The government put out a website being like, all about Y2K. So there was one that was like for adults, and it was all, hey, this is Y2K, and there's an FAQ, and I was like, do I need to close my bank account? Things like that. And it would be like, no, everything's fine. It would all be like basically reassurance. And there was like a kids version, so that was slightly more friendly. They would say things like, do my parents need to empty their bank accounts? No. Sorry, somebody knocked, and I don't know if... Did my neighbours just knock on my wall? No, it's fine. It's fine. Shh, it's okay. So, in like different countries around the world, they had sort of these websites to sort of appease and ease the populace. Now, for people sort of fell into a couple of categories. In general, like sometimes now Y2K is seen as this mass hysteria for like no reason, like it's a joke, and stuff like that. But like the reason, like a couple of minor glitches happened, and then another glitch happened this year, which I'll talk about in a minute. And there's another one coming, so like we'll talk about those in a wee second after this. So because people fell into a couple of categories, some people were some things will go wrong, but it'll be fine. It's like a lot of people were that. I know even when I was 10, 11 or something, like I was young. So 12? Who knows? Anyway, I was an age of some kind. And fairness, I spent the millennium vomiting because I got a stomach bug. So basically my mum's cousin, who is how would I put this? People who like act like they have money and like to show off, like one of them. And so we were all there for like this big New Year's party, and I started being sick, and my mum was like, "You've been eating too much chocolate." I mean, one, I probably was, but then I wouldn't stop being sick. But I had an aunt and uncle who had decided, because their kids were really small, well, not really small, they'd stayed with their, so my youngest cousin, she must have been she was a toddler at that point, or a baby, and they were like, "We're not going to this fucking party, we don't want to do that." And they were like, "You know what? Bring Katie back to us, we're staying in, we're going to watch all the stuff on the thing anyway." So I went back there, I was like, "That's the fucking teas right there, bud." And off I go, I'm chilling out, being a bit sick, but they're making me like chicken soup and stuff, and I'm just like cuddled on the couch, like watching the fireworks displays in London and all that. But the point is, like, I remember being scared. Like, I remember being really worried. I mean, not just because, "Oh my God, neighbour's dog. Shush. Thank you." So anyway, I remember being like really, really scared that something bad was going to happen. Like there was like this air of like doom about it, and it. So yeah, I mean, but I digress. And like, so some people, they were like, it's fine. Some people had that little bit of like fear following them. But as it turns out, I have an anxiety disorder, and a bunch of other stuff wrong with me. So like, it's no wonder I was sort of panicking, but it's fine. Anyway, point being, other people were like, "Hoax, everything's fine, we're talking about, it's nothing." And then you had doomsday preppers. So that effectively, there was a group of people who genuinely believed that this was going to cause, not a revolution, an apocalypse. They thought it was going to cause an apocalypse, and like everything was going to be off grid. There was going to be like no electrics and no internet and none of that stuff. And it's probably similar to like people were building bunkers, and they were getting all their tinned food, all their tins, their cans, their jars, like all of their stuff. They were prepping it. They were like doing their survival shiz. That being said, I know exactly what I'll do when the apocalypse happens. Like, I know exactly where I'm going. I know why I'm going there. I know what I'm bringing with me. And whom. Yes, I am bringing my mother. Anyway, so, and my kids. Can't leave them behind. Anyway, I'm kidding. Anyway, so people went full into proper doomsday prepping. Like, they were convinced this was going to be the end of life as we know it. And people were genuinely prepared for this. And you can kind of understand it. I mean, I can. Like, you can understand why they would be so terrified. Like nuclear reactors, like people were running off to the wilderness and being like, "I'm going to wait it out a bit, please." So, although granted, if the nuclear missile strikes you anywhere, like you're a goner anyway. But that's neither here nor there. Let's be optimistic. So like the general public the talk about the Millennium Bug didn't really, I mean, people weren't really discussing it as much until sort of the end of 98, the beginning of 99. And that's when, because again, also the internet's in its infancy really for the general public. So it would be in like the newspapers and the TV shows, the talk shows, and it would sort of show up there. It wasn't necessarily like the radio. It's not like today where you have, but as far back as 97, government had started to put action in place. The Y2K problem was so grand and so all-encompassing that not only did governments put together task forces and funnel all this money to avert this issue, but so did the private sector. So private industry did the same thing. And all in all, it's like Bill Clinton had a task force, But because Bill Clinton had basically put forth a thing for the problem before he was impeached. Bill Clinton got off so much easier than Monica Lewinsky did. But, I mean, even Australia, like, only now, just released documents pertaining to, like, all of the efforts that they put in for Y2K. Like, companies like Microsoft, because a lot of PCs, a lot of personal computers that weren't, like, Apple and Apple Mac, before, like, iMac and stuff came out, a lot of the computers, the PCs, would run on Windows, as quite a lot of them still do. Now, because what Windows did is Windows actually created a CD for a compact disc, a CD for Windows users, so that they could, put it into their computer and it could patch up and run, so everybody could do it independently, as opposed to trying to start at one source and have the computer update. Because back then, considering it would take you, like, I remember sitting there and trying to download a song, and it took several hours. Like, you do not understand the trauma of dial-up. Most of you, but anyway. So it would take hours to download a song or a picture and all this kind of stuff, and, I mean, yeah, and I was going to make a Pornhub joke there, but I decided probably best not to. So, like, basically they would put out a CD, and the CD you'd put it in, and it would update the computer for you, and it would do the patch, to stop it going into the dark ages, or glitching, or just freezing, crashing, anything like that. And then, like, a lot of legacy systems, as they were called, so the older systems, they would do things, there was a couple of, like, solutions they were going to do. Because, like, there was a few different approaches depending on whatever they were using. So, date expansion, so that was basically turning the 2-digit into the 4-digit. So, instead of being 87, it would be 1987. So it was moving it up so that it was going to register 2000 and not 1900.
Being a part of a royal family might seem enticing, but more often than not, it comes at the expense of everything else, like your freedom, your privacy, and sometimes even your head. Wondery's new podcast, Even the Royals, pulls back the curtain on royal families, past and present, from all over the world, to show you the darker side of what it means to be royalty. From icons like Grace Kelly, Oscar-winning actress turned Princess of Monaco, who the world saw as the ultimate good girl. She mastered playing a happy wife and mother, but beneath it all, she was desperately lonely. Grace spent her whole life working towards perfection, and it ultimately cost her her happiness. Or King Ludwig II from Bavaria. He was only 18 when his father died, leaving the crown to him and a duty to rule that he never wanted. He refused to lead, and used the funds from the royal treasury to further his extreme love of opera. But this choice eventually cost him the crown and his life. Follow Even the Royals on the Wondery app, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can binge Even the Royals ad-free right now on Wondery Plus.
Fargo, the new virtual assistant from Wells Fargo, makes banking faster and easier. Like this.
Fargo, what's my checking account routing number?
And this.
Fargo, turn off my debit card.
And this.
Fargo, what did I spend on groceries last month?
And that's just the beginning. Do you, Fargo? You can in the Wells Fargo mobile app. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/getfargo.
Terms and conditions apply. Your mobile carrier's availability and message and data rates may apply. Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.
This is seen as, I'm going to call it the purest solution, because this resulted in, the dates were unambiguous, they're permanent, they're easy to maintain. The issue with a lot of stuff, though, is that this was very expensive. Like, this was probably the most expensive way to do it. And, there was, like, lots of... but it did mean converting, like, entire systems. It was huge undertaking. Another one was, like, not a permanent solution. It was more like a patching situation. and it's called date windowing. So everything still stayed as a 2-digit year, and the programs themselves would determine the century value when they were needed for particular functions. So like date comparisons and calculations. And so this was easier to do because it was a small patch into the code of programs, and this was basically installing small patches of code into programs, and this was like easier to test and implement than date expansion, and it was cheaper to do. It was not a permanent solution, but like they were expecting like legacy systems to be replaced over the coming decades anyway, so it shouldn't be an issue. Another thing they did, date compression. So because dates can be compressed into like 14-bit numbers, and the scheme, I don't know the technology. I'm not the most technical person in the world, so I'll try to put this in a way that made sense to me. It basically means that this particular scheme could represent over 16,000 years. So by doing this date compression and doing it into the binary code, into 14 bits, is a thing. I don't understand the stuff about it because math is not my strong point. I wish it was, but it's not. And about this, like I already mentioned the software kits, which is like Windows doing wee patches, and most of these were free, and then some of them were not, and they were funded. There was basically a $50 million Millennium Bug kit that was covered by the US government. But now, and then another thing they did was date repartitioning. So in these older or these legacy databases, and the size like could not really be changed. The 6-digit like year, month, day codes, they were converted into 3-digit years. So like 1999 was 099 and 2001 was 101. So the systems that use this, it's not really going to be an issue until the year 2899. So we have some time to work on that. That's good. And then there was bridge programs, and I could not find any information on bridge programs. So yeah. For the most part, because programmers and coders and scientists and mathematicians all worked like dogs, they killed it. They worked consistently and tirelessly to ensure that, you know, these huge issues weren't going to happen. Like, but stuff happened all over the world. But, like, a lot of it was minor. Like, it wasn't a huge, grandiose situation. So, like, say, for example... So, like, some of the stuff that happened, like, in Singapore, and Sweden, taxis had issues with taxi cabs. And so, like, taxi meters in Singapore, they just stopped working. And in Sweden, all the taxi fares, they were incorrect. They didn't, like, it wasn't like it struck midnight and then they started happening. It was, like, just through January itself, really. So, things that happened. Let's talk about Japan. So we'll start with Japan. So I'm going to apologise for any name that I pronounce incorrectly. I'm so sorry, Japan. I'm so sorry. So in Onagawa, an alarm sounded at a nuclear power plant at 2 minutes past midnight. And Ishikawa, the radiation monitoring equipment failed at midnight. So, like, again, the nuclear issue. But the official said there was no, like, actual risk to the public because they got it fixed, like, pretty quickly. The Osaka Media Port, which is like a telecommunications carrier. So there was an error in data management, and this happened at 2 minutes past midnight, and then by 2:45 in the morning, the issue was fixed. So, I mean, another communications network, NTT Mobile, which is like Japan's, like, it was at least Japan's, like, big sort of mobile phone cellular operator. Some models of their phones started deleting new messages instead of the old messages because, like, space was filling up on the phones. So yeah, in Sheffield, the UK, in England, glitches and problems and malfunctions that happened in Australia. The bus ticket validation machines, they wouldn't work. So more stuff that happened in Japan. 5% of the post office cash dispensers, they just stopped working. The Weather Bureau, their computers, a bunch of their data was corrupted. In the US, in the UK, in Sheffield, in the UK, in England, there was basically a thing about, there's a risk assessment for Down syndrome for pregnant women, for pregnant people. So in Sheffield and England in the UK, so these risk assessments were made for pregnant people relating to Down syndrome. And these incorrect risk assessments were sent to about 154 pregnant people, and 2 abortions were carried out as a direct result of this. Because there was like a miscalculation of the mother's age or something. 4 people who had been told they were in like the low risk group, they ended up giving birth to children who had Down syndrome. Elsewhere in the UK, there are these self-service ticket machines, and effectively, so they were printing the date wrong, and so the ticket gates at some of the railway stations, because the card goes in and pops up again, so it goes boop boop, and like it wouldn't read the date, like it wouldn't connect. But anyway, so the bank HSBC had these card swipe machines for, payments on debit and credit cards. So for payments and transactions, the stores that had these HSBC card swipe machines couldn't use them. So like 10,000 just stopped working. They wouldn't process credit and debit card transactions. And that actually happened on the 28th of December 1999. So it was only on 1st of January that the machine started working again. And so what they actually had to do, I don't know if you've ever seen the paper, there's a paper credit card, they would call it a machine. So what it does is it basically takes a print of your card. It embosses it onto the paper, and you have this information, and then you just put the transaction through at a later date. So the stores would either have to use that, or they would have to use just cash payments or checks and things like that. In the US, the US Naval Observatory, which runs like the master clock that keeps the country's official time, gave the date on its website as the 1st of January, 19,100. 1st of January, 19,100. Imagine waking up to that. I'm in the future. In Omaha, Nebraska, records of aircraft maintenance couldn't be accessed. It just wouldn't register. At Reagan National Airport, check-in lines because baggage handling problems were affected. The Coast Guard, their message processing system just wasn't working properly. Meanwhile, in France, it had the same problem as the US Naval Observatory. So Météo France, which is like the weather forecasting service, it made the webpage show like the forecast for the date as like the 1st of the 1st, 19,100. And this like happened like all across the world actually. That little 19,100. That's the date. In Bulgaria, that's new. In Bulgaria, police documents were issued with like expiration dates of the 29th of February 2005 and the 29th of February 2010, which are not leap years. And the system had also defaulted to 1900. In Australia, the validation machines for bus tickets, they just weren't working. And an indirect result of the Y2K problem, issues occurred, like there was errors because of overflows and whatnot, and this actually led to the destruction of the NASA Deep Impact spacecraft. And because some software used the date windowing issue to interpret the years, so instead of 009, so like basically interpreted the years like 00 and 19 as 2000 to 2019, and then 20 to 99 as 1920 to 1999. So this has led to a bunch of issues. Oh my goodness, I totally forgot about cults. How did I forget cults? So we all know, so like we had Doomsday Survivor, we had Survivalists, but there was also, there was a bunch of fringe groups who were, how do I put this? So we have the Doomsday Preppers, the Self-Sufficiency Enthusiasts, communes, and fundamentalist religious organizations, my personal favourite, cults. So, and also the conspiracy theorists, because they're always around. Now, so Y2K was, exploited by some fundamentalist and somehow charismatic Christian leaders throughout the Western world. Let's face it, probably in the US and Canada and Australia mainly. And they basically, the perceived risks of Y2K combined with the end of the world scenario and apocalyptic prophecies, and they use this to influence their followers. Reverend Jerry Falwell suggested that Y2K would be the confirmation of Christian prophecy, God's instrument to shake this nation, to humble this nation. Along with survivalists, the Reverend Falwell advised stocking up on food and guns, food hoarding, because he was the rapture is coming. A lot, and that's just one. A lot of extreme evangelicals, especially, they used Y2K, the year 2000 problem, to promote this political agenda, basically saying that the downfall of government was a desired outcome, and this was supposed to usher in Christ's reign. And another person who did this, who sort of profited on fear and conspiracy, was a New Zealand-based, I'm going to call him Christian, prophetic author, and he was a preacher called Barry Smith. And he dedicates, he writes a book called, I think a book or something called I Spy with My Little Eye, I Spy with My Little Eye. And he, dedicates an entire chapter to Y2K. So a lot of these Christian fundamentalists, these extreme evangelicals and whatnot, they thought that, the millennium bug and the year 2000 problem was going to create this worldwide Christian revival. They did this whole the concept of rapture and the fear of this apocalypse. They used this to manipulate their followers for mass repentance and committing to their faith and their group and all this kind of stuff. And they were oh, you need to give us your money so that you can make it through to heaven and all this kind of stuff. So they used this as a way of just to take money from people, to profit, whether they were writing books or just asking them for money. It's just... But anyway, and then doomsday cults, there was doomsday cults that sort of revolved around Y2K. If I find one that's interesting, I will discuss it, because cults generally are pretty interesting, all in all. But yeah. And here's the funny thing now, so because some of this data patching that was used for date windowing and all this kind of stuff, because those were used, there's also a Y2020 problem as opposed to a Y2K because of the way they were patched. So windowing was basically seen as the worst of the solutions because it just basically pushed it to the side. You know, like, sure, I'll deal with it later. That's what windowing was. So coders choose 1920 to 2020 as the standard window, because of the significance of the midpoint of 1970. And this is all, so like a lot of programming languages and systems, they handle dates and times as seconds from 1970, 01, and it's called Unix or Unix time? I would call it Unix. And it's widely used as an operating system, and it's the standard. So the theory was, like we were saying before, that these windowed systems would be outmoded by the time 2020 came around. But many are still like, hang on, they're still there. And the issue had kind of been forgotten about. And fixing the issues in a legacy system is a nightmare for a lot of coders and programmers, because the original programmers aren't around anymore, and they assumed that these would be people in the 60s didn't think their code would still be around in the year 2000. They wouldn't think that. So small things have started happening. For 2020, some of the bills from utility companies, so electric, gas, all that kind of stuff, the bills are coming out with the date 1920 on them. So that's already. And parking meters in New York City again, they're not they're declining credit card transactions. Cash registers in Poland, they can't print receipts due to the way the clock works on the register. This is so funny. This is great. WWE 2K20, a professional wrestling video game, also stopped working at midnight on the 1st of January 2020. Granted, within 24 hours, the game's developers, they actually had a downloadable fix, so good for them. I like it when people are doing stuff. Oh, this is hilarious. I love this. There's a piece of software called Splunk, which looks for errors in computing systems, was actually found to be vulnerable to the Y2020 bug. Okay, that being said, they did find it in November of 2019. They did find it, and they fixed it within a week. But how any of these fixes are gonna last and work, we don't know. We're not sure. But also, in addition, furthermore, there's another storage system. So the Unix system, this is used by Apple and stuff. So, and it counts everything in seconds from 1970. So in the year 2038, so yes, we do have some time to fix it. In the year 2038, a similar state of storage problem is gonna be there. I'm gonna say this even though I don't understand entirely what it means. So if you're good at the math, congratulations. If not, I'm sorry. Okay. The data stored as a 32-bit integer will run out of capacity at 3:14 a.m. on the 19th of January 2038. So yeah, there we go. Yeah. So here's the thing, they were working on it from a decade before. And I can't argue that. The reason Y2K wasn't a huge problem was because people worked really, really hard to make sure it wasn't. So, lesson of the week. What have we learned? A stitch in time saves 9. Quick fixes are okay, but if possible, let's try and do things properly so we don't fuck up shit in the future. And don't join a fundamentalist group. And don't give all your money to a church. That's where I'm at. Oh my goodness, it's New Year. I didn't do any New Year's resolutions. I did not do any. What should my New Year's resolution be? So, I mean, here's the thing about New Year's. It's arbitrary in so many ways. It's irrelevant in many others. And it holds significance because, I'm being serious for a second, it holds significance because we put significance in it. And so, that's why we have New Year's resolutions. That's why we have this concept of new year, new you. It's a fresh start. It's a starting point. And, you know, for a couple of years, I literally just slept through the bells. I wasn't involved. I wasn't excited. I wasn't anything. And over the last year, my life has changed immensely for a number of reasons. And I'm a firm believer, start as you mean to go on. And I decided to start my year as I mean to go on. So what I did is I was relaxing, I was watching comedies, and then as the new year came around, I spent it talking to someone who was very important to me and someone who matters greatly to me. And my absolute best friend in the world. And I can't think of a better way to start my new year. And I'm getting emotional now. But anyway. And so here I am, a new chapter of my life. I'm currently packing up my stuff so I can move back home to my mother's. It is what it is, you know? It is what it is. Also, in addition, furthermore, you don't have to keep a New Year's resolution. If you want to, fabulous. If you don't want to, that's also fine. Don't give yourself too many. And sometimes resolutions are like, I want to lose weight or I want to do this. And it's like, fine, you want to do that? Absolutely fine. You know, fantastic. You do you, honey. But sometimes resolutions can be a positive, like, I'm going to treat myself better. I'm going to practice self-care. I'm going to allow myself moments of happiness. Because I'm an optimistic person, but I'm also incredibly jaded by life. So my personality is constantly at war with itself to try and even that out. And I'm trying to not let myself wallow. Like, I'm trying not to let myself wallow and fall into bad patterns. Because, I mean, it's probably inevitable and shit's going to happen, but I am doing my best and that's all I can do. But anyway, if you want to email me, there is whodidwhatnowpod@gmail.com. There's Instagram, whodidwhatnowpod, TikTok, whodidwhatnowpod, Twitter, whodidwhatnowpd. Because there wasn't enough characters to write pod. So I'm on all them. I'm also on TikTok, whodidwhatnowpod, or just whodidwhatnow, I think, maybe. So I'm on TikTok as well, where I do snippets of history and historical hot takes, sometimes, when I'm in the mood for it. Well, chat to you all another time. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Adios, my friends. Adios, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.